that middle experience. So you were at a couple of hedge funds. You were at Bridgewater, which is headquartered in Greenwich, Connecticut, and you were at Brevin Howard, which is still headquartered in London. In either of those cases, you weren't working as an investor, right? You were a researcher, analyst, capital raiser. How did those experiences at Bridgewater and Brevin Howard affect how you look at the world of investing? Clearly, two superstar funds that have put together a really impressive long-term track record.
Absolutely. When it comes to any asset management business, there are two things important. Make smart investment decisions and have investors to back you to do them. Right? And so I knew I had to master in one of those streams. And the stream I picked was I do the capital raising that enables the asset management industry engine to turn. And both Bridgewater and Brevin Howard were incredible training grounds to teach you just how to do that. But secondly, how to cover investors systematically and how to think about the world in a holistic way and what levers drive what others, both for macro hedge funds, as you know, and understanding how macro markets work, how they interplay with each other is incredibly important. I use that day to day when I speak to my private equity clients today. I use it all what's happening with rates impact endowments and pension plans. All of it is incredibly interlinked, and it's that interlinkage that macro thinking really teaches you.
Really intriguing. So it's kind of interesting that you're in private equity, you spent time in the world of hedge funds, but you also made a number of venture investments going back to the early 2010s. Tell us a little bit about how you sort of got involved in seed and angel investing, very early stage venture investing.
You know, we all have to decide what our gifts are to offer in the world. You know, one of the gifts I have to offer is how do you help businesses growth hack and get to the next level of scale. I did that with two businesses early on in the early 2010s, as you say. Bought a business called Barcore, a fitness boutique in the UK, doing something new for women, by women. Grew that over a course of 6 or 7 years, a very successful business, and sold that to a private equity-backed strategic. Did that again with a business called Mindful Chef, a healthy recipe box business that grew like gangbusters, especially over the COVID years, and sold that to Nestle as well. I'm chairperson of the board of a publicly listed company called SFC Energy. They do clean energy fuel cells. And being able to steer entrepreneurs and enable them to realize their vision and think of tactically as well as strategically as to how to get there, help them do that, that's very much something that helps me come alive every single day.
So let's expand on that, because most people, I would imagine, think of angel investing very different than private equity investing. One is you're betting on a team, you're betting on a founder, and some innovative new idea where there may not even be a market for that sort of thing yet, as opposed to taking existing company and management team and product and saying, here's how to level up, here's how to make this more productive and efficient, and really reach your potential. What's the overlap, or what skills you bring from one to the other?
Well, I think the most important skill I bring is the fact that I've started my own business, grown it from scratch, and sold it to a Fortune 300. So I've seen all legs of this journey.
So not just an investor, but an operator.
But an operator and a grower of our own business. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you are absolutely right, Barry. The muscle it takes to grow from 0 to 10 of revenue or 0 to 10 of EBITDA is very different from the journey that takes from 10 to 100 and 100 to a billion. These are different muscles, and these are different levers in the business, but also levers in mindset. I've done 0 to 10 quite a few times. So in my angel investing businesses, it was very much that, hey, how do we get from 0 to 10 of EBITDA? That takes a certain amount of nimbleness, hunger, agility, scrappiness, and I love that. Having done that myself, I know what that feels like. I can relate to the entrepreneurs. I can help them duck and weave through whatever's coming at them.
I'm sensing the word pivot coming.
I'm not going to use it because you used it already. But you've got to be able to figure out what I call the incomings. It's life is throwing a lot at you. The market throws a lot at you. And what are you going to ignore and deflect? And what are you going to say, okay, that's the signal from this noise. That's where I double click. That takes a pattern recognition that I have. Now, that said, over the last few years, once I've sold my business to Raymond James, I'm doing that other second leg of the journey. How do you take something that's established, growing, proven, and really scale it? And that's the same thing I'm doing with the public board seat at SFC, helping that management team and that board take an existing business. This is doing, close to $150 million of revenue, very profitable, growing organically 30% year on year. How do you take that and scale that to the next level? How do you make that $1 billion business? So now I'm trying my hand at that second leg of the journey, but that first leg of 0 to 10, that I've done a few times over, and I think I've got real value to add to entrepreneurs there.
So let me roll even further back. You launched Siebel Capital in 2011. What made you decide, I'm going to throw out a whole new company that's focused on, was it venture or private equity?
At the beginning, it was focused both on private equity and hedge funds. But within a year and a half, I retired all our hedge fund business because I could see the capital inflows going into the private markets opportunity. That was the right call to make. As you think about the last decade, the inflows into private equity have been phenomenal, and we've been a great beneficiary of that flow and that movement. But in the early days, what enabled me to start, or what gave me the conviction to start, was really the belief that if I could, like you said to me as we walked in the door here, build it and they will come. And if they don't come, at least you're enjoying the journey for yourself. I knew I loved capital raising. I knew I could do that effectively, and I could do that for a handful of clients. And my goal very much was, let me give this a shot, and if it doesn't work, I'll go out and get a job again. I was in my early 30s. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have kids. I had very few liabilities. It was a risk. It was a calculated one, and I'm very glad I took it because it worked out beautifully, but it's not for the faint of heart. That's for sure. Being an entrepreneur isn't anyway, but being an entrepreneur in an industry like financial services, where there's these old and very incumbent 800-pound gorillas all around you, is certainly not.
Really, really fascinating. Coming up, we continue our conversation with Sunaina Sinha, discussing her private equity experiences. I'm Barry Richholtz. You're listening to Masters of Business on Bloomberg Radio.
The global leader in business and financial news is now live on YouTube.
For our audience worldwide, this is Bloomberg Savannah.
Watch Bloomberg Radio all day.
This is a market that's much more bullish.
For market news, conversation, and insight from Bloomberg's signature radio shows, surveillance, markets, sound on, and business week.
We've got a rally in stocks.
More breaking news today from the Supreme Court. Bloomberg Radio. Watch us every business day live on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Global News. Bloomberg Radio. Context changes everything.
Every day, Cintas service reps help businesses get ready for the workday. They provide freshly laundered workwear delivered every week. Mats, mops, restroom and cleaning supplies. First aid and safety products to help your employees stay safe. They even test and inspect fire extinguishers and emergency lights. Cintas helps keep your business running smoothly. See what Cintas can do for you. Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
Shop Dell Technologies' early holiday savings event for their lowest prices of the year. The future is on sale today with limited time deals on select PCs like the XPS 16 that accelerate AI with Intel Core Ultra processors. Early holiday savings is their biggest sale of the year and the best time to upgrade, but it's only here for a limited time. Shop now at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. What comes to mind when you hear the word gratitude? Maybe it's a daily practice, or maybe it feels hard to be grateful right now. Don't forget to give yourself some thanks by investing in your well-being. BetterHelp is the largest online therapy provider in the world, connecting you to qualified professionals via phone, video, or message chat. Let the gratitude flow. Visit BetterHelp.com/healthieryou today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
It's time for a Tech Mobility Minute.
Beam Global, a California-based clean technology company, has officially launched its BeamSpot curbside electric vehicle charging solution. The new chargers integrate with existing streetlight infrastructure using solar, wind, and utility electricity with onboard battery storage to provide sustainable EV charging where it's needed most. The new BeamSpot system aims to meet growing EV charging demand in areas like street parking, shopping centers, and public access facilities, offering a cost-effective and less disruptive alternative to traditional additional charging installations. By replacing traditional streetlights, the EV charging solution eliminates the need for new grid circuits, construction, and complex permitting processes. The system is ideal for dense urban areas and locations with multi-unit housing, where EV infrastructure is harder to install. The number of streetlights is projected to grow to 352 million globally by next year. The key is seamless EV charging deployment. I'm Ken Chester.
This has been a Tech Mobility Minute. Everyone says that saving money is the most important part of retirement planning. But is it really? My parents had plenty of money, but it didn't make their lives any better after their health failed. I didn't want this to happen to me, so I went to a retirement planning seminar with elder law attorney Rajiv Nagaya. It really opened my eyes. I learned that retirement planning is about more than just saving money. You need a plan for the money you accumulate, and that plan needs to be focused on the right goals. That was the missing piece for my parents, and it was the missing piece for me. Now I have confidence that my financial plan will deliver the kind of retirement I want.
There's a free retirement planning seminar with attorney Rajiv Nagaya near you. Bremerton on January 7th, Federal Way on January 8th, Bellevue on January 9th, Puyallup on January 11th, Lacey on January 18th. To register, visit lifepointlaw.com or call 253-838-3454. That's lifepointlaw.com or 253-838-3454. When you're high, you feel different. Pretty obvious, right? You think different, talk different, but if you feel different, you drive different. So if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
It's just safer. Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
One vape pod has as much nicotine as one pack of cigarettes. Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council. You're listening to Masters in Business with Barry Riddle on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Barry Ritholtz. You're listening to Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio. My extra special guest this week is Sanena Sinha, Global Head of Private Capital Advisory Group for Raymond James. So, early in the 2010s, you were doing some angel investing. Tell us what you were looking for, either in sectors or technologies. What attracted you to the angel space?
What attracted me to the angel space was that I was building my business and had skills and learnings I wanted to share. But more importantly, when I looked for businesses and entrepreneurs to back, it came down to really two very important criteria. The first is people, people, people. I learned that during my Mayfield Fellows program journey at Stanford, where that was drilled into us. It starts with the people, it ends with the people. And secondly, the companies and the products they were building had to do good and do well, right? That they had to have this positive impact on the communities that they operated in. So if you think about the recipe food business, that was all about healthy eating. The fitness business was all about an exercise program that's efficiently designed for women's bodies. You think about the clean energy business that I am now chair of the board of. That's all about clean energy fuel cell alternatives to diesel generators and to polluting generator types. So that's kind of the thematic that I lean into the most.
Really interesting. So you very easily could have either set this up as a VC fund or affiliated yourself with a venture group. What are the advantages to being an individual making single decision investments into a startup?
I think the biggest advantage is that there's full alignment because you're not operating with OPM, other people's money. It is your money, it's your skin in the game. The alignment of interest is one thing that you learn in private equity and all private markets investing, that it's all about alignment of interest. You can't exit these things unless you grow value and you're in sync with the founders and with the management teams, because they're private businesses. So you've got to figure out if you have that match and alignment of both economic interest but also vision and execution forte into the next 3 to 5 year journey. So that's the minimum amount of time you'll be together for. So that's why I think doing it as an individual always gave me much more reward and also, quite frankly, economic success than doing it as a fund investor. The other thing I'd add is that I found very early on that professionally speaking, in terms of my day job, Barry, what was I really good at? I was really good at the capital markets function. I was really good at the capital raising, liquidity organization side of the business, and that's what Seville Capital did. So I knew that was going to be my day-to-day jam. And on the board of some of these companies, I will be able to go and add the value of how to grow their business.
So let's talk a little bit about your day job. You set up Siebel Capital in London, right?
In
That's
London.
where you founded?
Correct.
So before we get into the advisory services you provide, I'm a big Anglophile. I love
Yeah.
London. But there's such a difference between how they operate, the economy, and especially the financial sector. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's it like being, is it even bi-coastal? You're NY, you're nylon? Pretty
Nylon,
regular?
that's my
Right?
root.
How different is the UK finance from the US and the startup mentality? It seems that failure is not a dirty word in the US. I don't get that same vibe from Europe. Tell us a little bit about the differences.
You are absolutely right. Operating in the UK and in Europe at large and the US are fundamentally different. Having been at Stanford, worked in the Bay Area, then went to Harvard and worked in the Boston ecosystem, came out to New York. And London was a bit of an adjustment, I will tell you that. Because the startup ecosystem, especially in the early 2010s, was nowhere near what it was in San Francisco and the Bay Area and Boston.
I mean, that's a well-established, mature, if you could say mature startup region, but it is, and the same with Boston and New York.
100%. And so starting Siebel Capital in London ended up being both a blessing and a curse. Why was it a blessing? It was a blessing because there was not that many startups there, period. There was not that many new entrepreneurs starting financial services companies. And so it made us very unique and able to differentiate ourselves in the UK and European market very quickly. There were not that many new entrants. And we used that to our advantage and often still do. Although the market has definitely come a long way, there are still divergences on ease of doing business. But it became very clear to me, Barry, very quickly on we would have to diversify our business to be U.S. focused. And so we opened our first office in New York a few years after we started, and we've been heavily focused on the U.S. private equity clients and U.S. institutional investors. Have done so from day one, knowing that actually the U.S. market is much deeper and much larger than UK or Europe could ever be, but also the speed of doing business varies quite dramatically.
So we've talked about the startup and angel world. Let's talk about the advisory work you do for private equity, both in London and the U.S. I keep coming back to there seems to be such a difference between how companies operate there and how companies operate here. Every now and then, a European company comes to the U.S. and succeeds, but more often than not, they have a hard time adjusting. And I imagine the same is true vice versa when a U.S. company goes to the U.K., at least outside of finance. Finance seems to have found a foothold in Europe from the U.S. Why the big cultural differences? What is it about the psychology there and here that creates such a different business and investing environment?
I think that it depends on what type of investing you do. Right? At its heart, private equity is about buy low, sell high, right? It's a long-only strategy in the private markets. So you got to buy a business and you got to know that you have to add value and make it larger, better, stronger, and then sell it on. So a number of the clients we have are pure play regional focused. So we have a German private equity client. We have a Benelux private equity client. We have a Nordic private equity client. We've got a UK client. And they are experts in understanding what needs to happen to grow their businesses and their companies that they're buying and selling in their target market. They know the customer base. They know how to impact the value drivers, i.e. on the talent acquisition side, on the add-on, bolt-on strategy side. They know how to do that in their regional markets incredibly well.
And I just want to interrupt and say, is it that different from Germany to the Netherlands to Sweden to the UK? Like completely, like in the United States, New York is in Florida, Florida's in Texas, Texas is in California.
That's right.
But you could hop from one place to another and it's not so different that you can't adjust to the regional. We more or less speak kind of the same language throughout the country. Maybe there are some dialects and differences, but the general gestalt of California, New York, Texas, the politics may be different, but the business seems to be the same.
Yeah.
That's not true in Europe, is it?
It depends on the size of businesses you're buying, right? If you're buying businesses that are up to, say, 10 or 20 million dollars or euros of EBITDA, then it really matters that you're a regional champion, right? That you understand how a German business can scale in that end of the market versus how a a Nordic business full scale. So there having regional footholds and expertise really matters. But when you're doing larger businesses, and we have clients that are pan-regional, that are European, pan-European buyout players, or that are global buyout players that do global deals, US and Europe, but they do them for larger businesses, and larger businesses often tend to have global customers, because by definition you've got to make sure you've diversified your revenue out. So it depends on what scale of business you're doing, but even if we're the largest private equity funds out there, they will have local offices. If they know they need to operate in the Italian market, they'll have presence in Milan, or they'll have Italian experts in-house that know how to operate and buy businesses in Milan, or they'll have sector experts. If there's a software business in Italy, is going to be very similar to software business in Texas. You know, the operating environment might change, but the characteristics of the business and how you drive value in that business will often be very similar. So you've got to make sure you're either a sector or a regional expert, and that often depends on the size of business you've got.
So you've lived in Africa, you've lived in India, you've lived in Vietnam, you've been to Thailand and all over Asia.
Yes.
Have you thought of expanding to some of these other continents, or is it just U.S. and Europe?
We do cover Asian and Middle Eastern investors in my business prolifically, and have done from almost the first day of inception. You cannot ignore the rest of the world. As you know, the sovereign wealth funds and the institutions in the Middle East are big movers in the market today. And that's today. I started covering Middle Eastern institutions when I first opened the doors of the business, now 14 years ago. And 14 years ago, people were like, I don't know if I need to go over there. It's a huge investment of time and airfare and so forth. Well, now everyone's saying, I wish I'd built those relationships long ago, because relationships die hard in those markets, Asia and Middle East, and those relationships I've had and my team has had for a long time.
Huh. So let's talk a little bit about valuation. In the public markets, hard to say fourth quarter 2024 U.S. markets aren't, at the very least, fully priced, if not richly priced. When we look at the UK, when we look at Europe, much, much less expensive. We see a lot of companies trading at book value.
Yeah.
Not the same growth level that we see in the US. Does that valuation difference in the public markets extend to private markets as well?
So, firstly, let's comment on the public market side. That is characterized very much, that valuation gap is characterized by the depth of the markets. The U.S. capital markets is vibrant, incredibly dynamic, incredible fragmentation of investors, deep, rich market where you can do business on the capital market side pretty seamlessly.
And I would add, plus all these giant mega tech companies that certainly have rich valuations and skew, whether it's the NASDAQ 100 or the S&P 500.
Yeah.
You know, there's a handful of them overseas, Taiwan Semiconductor, ASM Lithography. You can name SAP, you can name like a handful, but most of the big ones are here, which certainly skews
the valuation.
On the public side, what do you see on the private side?
On the private side, we see a similar valuation gap. That, and I'll just finish the public market side. The UK and the European capital markets just don't have the same depth, which is why you see the valuation mispricing.
So you think it's more than just the tech companies, it's the structure.
It's structural. There's not that many participants. It's also legal and regulatory, right? In the UK, there was a move away from holding UK assets by the UK pension plans. That sucked the liquidity out of the UK markets, hence the valuation gap. So there's also regulatory angles that are at play there. On the private markets, though, I've got to agree with you entirely. There is a valuation arbitrage even in the private market.
Wow.
That the European buyout specialists are able to buy companies at better value in Europe and scale them into global businesses and sell them at global valuations or U.S. market valuations when it comes down to selling time. So some of the biggest, best private equity household names that you know, whether it's a Blackstone or an Apax or a Clayton, Dublin and Rice, have headquarters both sides of the pond because there's so much value to be harvested by buying smartly in Europe, and an advantage, quite honestly, a valuation arbitrage that you can play all day long, and many of them do so very successfully.
Coming up, we continue our conversation with Sunaina Sinha, Global Head of Private Capital Advisory Group for Raymond James, talking about private capital advisory. I'm Barry Bridgehoff. You're listening to Masters of Business on Bloomberg Radio.
Take care of your car, and it will take care of you. That's why Tom Kerr always recommends cleaning your fuel system with Dr. Injector FSM.
FSM, fuel injector cleaner, good stuff. Kia, just turned 170,000 miles on it. Put that stuff in it, and I'm telling you, I was like, whoa!
Yeah, FSM is reasonably priced. It's as good as there is. I wouldn't tell you it was good if it wasn't. Dr. Injector FSM. Available at your local Dr. Injector store, Amazon, or eBay. DocInjector.com.
Doctors Without Borders is delivering life-saving medical care where it's needed most in communities around the world. From bandaging war-wounded patients in Sudan to providing clean drinking water in Haiti, we're in more than 70 countries worldwide, bringing patients from sick to recovering, from emergency to aid, from crisis to care.
Avenue. That's stop-go traffic from North Point Way as you make your way down to there. And Hood Canal's getting reports of some trees now blocking the right lane of Highway 3 southbound right near Highway 104. Definitely give yourself some extra time and move over to the left. Just a reminder that the South Ward Bastion, vessel number 1, is also running about 25 behind schedule as of right now, and give yourself extra time. That's Northwest Traffic. I'm Andy Bass.
Retirement planning is about more than just saving money. You need a plan for the money you accumulate, and that plan needs to be focused on the right goals. Most people don't have that kind of retirement plan. That's why even the rich end up forced into institutional care when their health fails. Give yourself a gift. Make 2025 the year that you create a real plan for retirement. One that delivers the kind of life you want, even if you get sick. Avoid the nursing home. Avoid going broke paying for care. Avoid burdening your family. More than 8,000 people in the Seattle area have created this kind of retirement plan. Attend a free seminar with elder law attorney Rajiv Nagayach, and you can too.
There's a free retirement planning seminar with attorney Rajiv Nagayach near you. Bremerton on January 7th, Federal Way on January 8th, Bellevue on January 9th, Puyallup on January 11th, Lacey on January 18th. To register, visit lifepointlaw.com or call 253-838-3454.
In these divided times, where can you go to get both sides of the story? Not just the left. Democracy itself is at stake. Not just the right.
The conservatives in the state are making the case right now.
When politicians talk.
I'm joined by Washington State Governor Jay Inslee, Jim Walz, chairman of the Washington State Republican Party.
They talk to Jeff. The Northwest Politicast with Jeff Botula. Weekends on Northwest News Radio and anytime wherever you get your podcasts. Your podcast.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker. Desiree Hill, owner of Crown's Corner Mechanic in Conyers, Georgia, started her business solo as a mobile mechanic. She tells the AP that sharing videos of her work on TikTok helped spread the word, and she became so popular she was able to open a 9,000 square foot brick-and-mortar shop with 5 employees 18 months ago. Small business owners use the platform in a variety of ways, from growing a customer base to advertising and marketing, as well as selling goods directly for the site. Now, a looming TikTok ban could affect the millions of small businesses that use the short video social media app to help them grow their businesses. The Justice Department ordered the app's Chinese-based parent company, ByteDance, to sell TikTok or face a U.S. ban by January 19th, citing security concerns. The Supreme Court will take up the matter, and President-elect Donald Trump, who takes office January 20th, has asked the Supreme Court for a delay. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
This is a story about our neighbors, who they are, whether we really know them, and why we need them. Neighbors like Anna Yore of Fargo, North Dakota.
You can walk in thermal glass without no experience, without no English. Good for immigrants and anyone in need job.
put the glove on.
Your moved from South Sudan to the city of Fargo 14 years ago, seeking a better life. In 2013, she started working at Cardinal Glass and has been an employee there ever since.
Many immigrants, we work like a family, and friends, and teamwork, and we help, we support each other.
So here in Fargo, we have 347 teammates. About 70% of our team is comprised of people born outside of the United States.
Plant manager Mike Arnson has worked at Cardinal Glass Fargo since it opened in 1998. The company manufactures residential glass for windows and doors with 10,000 employees across its 49 locations. In Fargo alone, it employs about 400 workers.
What we want to do is attract and hire the most qualified, the best qualified teammates that we can attract. And it just so happens that a lot of those folks that we're attracting happen to be immigrants. And we're more than happy to have them here.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, North Dakota has the worst worker shortage in America, with only 30 workers for every 100 available jobs. That's well below the national average of 95 workers for every 100 jobs.
There are 30,000 open jobs in North Dakota, and although our workforce continues to grow, if we get every high school and college graduate, every individual coming out of our correction system, every person on disability into the workforce tomorrow, we would still have thousands of open jobs. And so we really do need to be looking outside of our state's borders and outside of our nation's borders to help identify how we can recruit workers to fill the jobs that we have available.
Katie Ralston-Howe is director of North Dakota's Workforce Division, overseeing the newly created Office of Legal Immigration. Their goal? To bring together immigrants seeking employment and companies that need workers.
With the political climate that we're in, immigration has become a really hot topic. And when we talk about the work that we're doing through the Office of Legal Immigration, a lot of times the conversation does go to conversations around the border or illegal immigration, and that's really not what we're doing. Really, our focus is proactively identifying appropriate pathways and programs that we can utilize to help fill jobs in North Dakota. Employers have been responding really well. There's a ton of enthusiasm around the work that we're doing. Communities are responding well too, and so we've been able to really work with those who are already working in the state.
North Dakota may be the extreme case, but its shortage of workers can be seen in various forms across the country. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, labor shortages affect just about every industry in nearly every state. Although shortages have become less significant over the past 2 years, the latest national data show that we still have over 8 million job openings in the U.S. and fewer than 7 million people looking for those jobs. Pia Oranius is a labor economist with the Dallas Federal Reserve. Her research focuses on regional economic growth and demographic change.
There are areas of the country, especially the more rural states, where there's a great need for workers, but at the same time their populations are stagnant or declining. And so they have a tremendous need for workers. And of course, if you had a good policy, immigrants would be one of the best ways to funnel workers to those regions.
As the overall size of the U.S. workforce has grown, the proportion of immigrants in that workforce has grown as well, going from just over 15% back in 2010 to over 19% today. That's some 33 million people. The construction industry had the highest share of immigrant workers in 2022, an estimated 3.3 million people, or 11.7% of all immigrant employment. In comparison, there were just over 8 million native-born workers in construction in 2022, representing 6.2% of all native-born employment.
We're in a demographic fall. We know that slowly but surely, we're seeing the baby boomers retire, the aging of the U.S. labor force, the declining birth rates, and we know that labor shortages are not just a cyclical matter, they're actually a structural matter for the U.S. economy. And if you look out 10 years or so, we're actually looking at a point in time where the U.S.-born workforce will begin to decline. In fact, we will have no growth in the workforce without immigration. We've been very lucky in the U.S. that immigrants have wanted to come to this country, and they've contributed labor supply in terms of their contributions to the economy. This labor supply has boosted growth. They've also tended to come in the areas of the economy where we have relative scarcity, where we need workers, and so whether it's on the high skill end of the distribution or the low skill end of the distribution, we tend to bring in workers where there's fewer American workers, and so immigrants are really complementing that U.S. labor force. This has really been key to rounding out the economy, addressing needs in different sectors, and so definitely mostly sectors on more of the low to medium skilled end, because obviously it takes immigrants a while to learn the language, to get the skill set and the networks to sort of move up the job ladder in the U.S. economy. But for now, they're filling important needs in these sectors that employ recent immigrants and more the low-skilled immigrants. Now, looking forward, now that the economy is more in balance, labor markets are more balanced, and we're really approaching a kind of a normalization after, 4 years of a pandemic hangover. I think what we're looking to now is more of the structural factors that affect labor markets in the U.S. and that are going to limit growth going forward. So we look at the demographics of the U.S. labor force, we look at the retirement of baby boomers, the aging of the workforce, the falling birth.
World, doing capital raising for two large hedge funds, and one of them, Brevin Howard, which was headquartered in London, so moved over to London back in 2009, and the rest is history. Has been a resident of London. My family would argue with you, Barry, and argue with anybody who asked them that I live on a plane, because I manage a global business over 7 offices, 6 of which happen to be in the U.S. So I'm stateside a lot, and also travel the rest of Europe, but home very much is London.
So Sunday facing a last-ditch challenge from neighboring New Jersey. New Jersey went to court Friday to urge a federal judge to stop the congestion pricing plan's launch, while U.S. transportation officials provide specifics from their environmental review of the project that he ordered earlier this week. The hearing in Newark caps a high-stakes showdown between the two states, with billions of dollars in toll revenue on the line for modernizing New York's more than century-old transit system. After hearing arguments for about an hour and 20 minutes, Judge Leo Gordon called a brief recess and said he would come back and advise the parties on what comes next.